Hi everyone, I'm Sandie La Nae. Welcome to Psychic Creations. We have a very interesting show for you today, as I will be narrating the first book of our Virginia City Trilogy, which is titled Weird Haunted Virginia City. Please enjoy the show. Hello everyone. I am Sandie La Nae, and I'm a Nevada author. This is Arline La Ferry. She is a docent and special works historian at the Nevada Historical Society in Reno, Nevada. Arline and I have written and are writing a series of what we title Weird Books. Each book is filled with interesting facts, anecdotes, thrills and chills, trivia, and fun and enlightening bits and pieces of information. Actually, Weird Haunted Virginia City was written a bit differently, more sobering than our other volumes. We wrote this special weird book because so much rich and important history from this town has been lost or forgotten. Thanks to our books, this is no longer the case. Don't let the title deceive you, though, as it isn't a volume filled with cute ghost stories. Weird Haunted Virginia City is a book about the difficulties of living in a mining town. There are articles written within about the hardship, the despair, the lost hopes and dreams, and the death that surrounded this community on a daily, if not hourly, basis. This book is about the treacherous times that have left haunting impressions still seen and felt today in this historic town. But this book is also about the awesome history of the residents' lives, their homes and businesses, their careers and jobs, and their day-to-day situations that most people today might never know about if it weren't for our book. We are very proud to say that this book has 35-plus accumulated years of research and has over 50,000 pieces of information, from documents, letters, articles, edicts, newspapers, certificates, ordinances, reports, interviews, records, licenses, correspondence, well, just about every kind of communication and connection there is. Now I will expound on a few of the events written in this book, with excerpts about the history enveloping this Wild West community and the interesting happenings. Although I will speak of a few horrific circumstances, I'll leave the many other shocking entries for your own reading pleasure. Virginia City was founded in 1859. During its heyday in the mid-1870s, the population was over 25,000. By the late 1870s, the mine's output declined, and so did the city's distinction start to wane. During the 20 years of the Comstock's mining success, it is said over $400 million of ore was extracted out of the mines. If you were to calculate that amount in today's value, the ore would be worth $9,333,596,409.02. Speaking of mines, did you know that mules were used instead of horses to drive out the ore carts? The reason for this is, a horse will freak out if something touches their ears, such as the top of the tunnel. Mules, however, don't freak out because they just lower their heads. Smart guys they are. Mary Jane Simpson was a highly important laborer in Virginia City mines. She was from the ancient and noble family of Andalusian asses. The miners named her, and she was loved by everyone. Her permanent stall was deep in the mines. Her shift was from 3 to 11 p.m., and she never complained once because she had the greatest care and the best food. Working in the Belcher and Consolidated mines, each day she transported 250 tons of ore to the mill. In her 2 years of servitude, Mary Jane Simpson hauled over $18 million of silver and gold out of the mines, and she never spent 1 penny of that fortune. Speaking of hauling things out, we present to you the outhouse, where nature truly meets nature. I can't even begin to tell you how many deaths took place in an outhouse, and that includes falling into a hole perhaps never to be found again. I will just say that when it is your time to go, it is your time to go. Soothsayers were big business in Virginia City. I'm sure most everyone was interested in finding out if they were to become millionaires from the mines, or from owning a business, or being a madam at a brothel, which was a very important duty in a mining town. One awesome psychic of the time was Eileen Bowers, of Bowers Mansion fame. After losing her fortune when her husband died, she turned to her forte of fortune-telling, using a crystal ball she called a peepstone. Known as the Great Washoe Seeress, Eileen foretold many correct events, including the Great Fire of 1875 that nearly destroyed Virginia City. Other noted Virginia City women were the ladies of the evening, who followed the mining camps around the region. After all, mining men needed something to do above ground after spending a long day, usually 10 hours, underground. Many fallen women lost their lives due to jealous lovers or disease, and from opium use. Opium was prevalent in Virginia City and abused by most every courtesan just to get through each day. There were many suicides among these ladies, using opium as their choice for death. A career in prostitution was quite hard on women. Entertainment took on a different variety in old Virginia City, such as at a particular pharmacy that kept a man's heart in a jar full of alcohol for the viewing pleasure of the community's residents. John Sullivan's heart was on display in July of 1875 at Kohl's drugstore. Those with a morbid curiosity would stop in to see the 2 bullet holes in this organ that killed him. As a piece of trivia, John Sullivan was buried without his heart. Yes, John Sullivan was literally a heartless man upon his burial. Explosions were a thing of fear on many people's minds in Virginia City. Explosions just didn't happen in the mines, however. They could happen right in the heart of the city. General Van Bokkelen lived in a second-floor room in a building located in the middle of town. He was an agent for the Giant Powder Company. He stored 6 cans of nitroglycerin, 150 pounds of giant powder, and 200 pounds of black blasting powder in the basement. Well, the only thing that could happen did happen. On June 29, 1873, there was an explosion that horrifyingly and gruesomely blasted buildings and people to bits. Quite a few people were separated in the explosion. In fact, the remaining pieces of 3 females were buried, all in one coffin. Speaking of women, did you know that women's clothing of that era could either save your life or cause your death? It's true. On February 10, 1898, a .40 caliber revolver was used by Mr. Douglas to shoot Miss Gussie Melville. A bullet hit a gusset in Gussie's corset near her heart. The corset shattered, acting like a coat of mail, leaving only a superficial wound. Douglas was arrested, and Miss Melville recovered quite nicely. Mrs. Curran wasn't so lucky. On December 1, 1869, while attempting to retrieve some water from a mill, the metal hoop of the skirt she was wearing got caught in a wheel shaft that led to the water barrel for that mill. 2. The clothing over the metal hoop wound tightly around the wheel shaft, and at each revolution of the wheel, the poor woman was whomped on the floor. Needless to say, due to a severe concussion and multiple broken bones, she died 2 hours after the accident. 16-year-old newlywed Amelia McKay usually accompanied her husband to his job. He worked the night shift at the Gould and Curry hoisting work. On February 18, 1873, Amelia, at work with her hubby, went into the office to retrieve a book. When she returned, she walked next to the pumping machine. Her skirts got caught, and she was pulled backwards into the space between the large spur wheel and the stone foundation upon which the machinery sits. Mrs. McKay was tightly wedged, and all bones were crushed from her waist to her knees. She lived for 5 minutes. The Territorial Enterprise printed the entire gory story, taking up column after column after column. Most of the article is reprinted in Weird Haunted Virginia City for your reading's pleasure. Speaking of newspapers, I would like to pass on a word of sage advice to you. Don't play with guns, especially cheaply made guns. Double especially when the local newspapers print everything that is going on. Father McGrath accidentally shot himself while examining and revolving the cylinder of a cheap self-cocking pistol of inferior make. The bullet entered his chest. Headlines rang out in the afternoon edition of the Territorial Enterprise. According to his physicians, the bullet wound will cause his death by the end of the day. It is interesting how the newspapers from that time period wrote every detail about an occurrence and predicted the future, which wasn't that difficult to predict in this instance. As you can see, undertakers were much needed in this western mining town. So many accidents and killings happened in the mines from lawlessness, jealousy, insanity, drunkenness, all the usual maladies. Undertakers were quite busy. One very noted Virginia City undertaker was Colonel Joseph A. Conboy. He was known, however, not just for his undertaking duties and skills, but as an inventor. He patented the hand case. Patent number 685574 on October 29, 1901. The hand case kept rigor mortis from curling the fingers, and with cotton stuffed inside, the hands were bleached to make them not look dead. As of 2015, when we were writing the book, Conboy's invention was up to the 111th patent of it, as surgeons use this device, updated of course, to this day. Did you know that for a while, coffins had no exact measurements? They were just built. If a particular body didn't fit, your bones were broken so you could be stuffed in. It was common practice if a body was too long for a casket, the ankles were broken and then the feet laid back upon the leg. Many causes of death were not just from shootings, accidents, killings, illness, and suicides, etc. Nope. Falling off a horse, getting kicked by a horse, getting run over by a horse and carriage, or getting thrown out of a carriage due to the reckless speed of a spooked horse were stated on numerous coroner's reports. Did you know that Virginia City hated San Francisco with a burning passion? Yes, for many reasons actually, but I will relay here one very important reason. The bones of Virginia City's dead were shipped to San Francisco to be used at the sugar refinery. The bones might have had something to do with the separating process of the sugar. Either way, it was a horrible desecration of the deceased. Needless to say, the living Virginia Cityites were very displeased, and no matter how much they protested this blasphemous matter, it continued. Hauntings, ghosts, specters. Many people do believe that Virginia City is very haunted. Others pooh-pooh the idea. Read our book to find out some scary events that went on in the mines, in houses, on the street. But, as a teaser, if you stop at the St. Mary Louise Hospital, now known as the St. Mary's Art Center, walk onto the front porch and ask that Sister Xavier appear and say hello. She did for me, and I have a phenomenal photo of her doing so. If you happen to shop inside of the Comstock Bandito, look for the ghost of a golden retriever who sleeps in the back of the store. He loves kids, and children will actually tell their parents that a ghost dog came up and licked them. The looks on the parents' faces are priceless. Back to the Weird Haunted Virginia City volume. It might be best to leave the light on when you read this book at night, however. Ghosts aren't the only frightening thing that happened in Virginia City. Last but not least, our book also dispels some of the frightening myths about certain events that are alleged to have occurred, such as dead bodies, usually minus caskets, were stacked in layers and piles in the backs of stores and alleys, waiting for the spring thaw to be buried. This didn't happen. Why would any store, bar, or restaurant owner want a dead person in the back of their business rotting away? Embalming practices weren't the norm until the turn of the century. By then, Virginia City was becoming a ghost town. Besides, if this practice actually transpired, why wasn't it written in any papers? Remember, they printed everything then. There was a special place for the dead. Read about that special place and where it was located in our Weird Haunted Virginia City book. Another frightening myth was the popular story about the Millionaires Club. That is quite comical, actually. The organization was said to be held upstairs at the Washoe Club and was the gathering place for the wealthy. Much drinking and debauchery that only the rich could afford and afford to do was going on practically 24/7, according to the myths. Truthfully, the Millionaires Club was a ploy created by the then new owners of the Washoe Club building in the 1960s to provide legal title to the upper section of the structure on this piece of property. The owners even created a token for the Millionaire Club as a souvenir in celebration of owning this historical building. Sadly, there are many myths surrounding this historic town, but our book has true accounts written within from extensive research. So, to conclude, if you are interested in reading further the accounts that I have spoken about during this address, and additional interesting, albeit ghastly, history surrounding Virginia City, you can purchase this book and our other published weird volumes at my website, which is www.sandypsychicstones.com. The second book in our trilogy is The Weird Silver Terrace Cemetery, Tales Beneath the Tombstone. In this book, you meet many wonderful cemetery residents and learn the history of this famous cemetery. The third volume in our Virginia City Trilogy is Weird Virginia City. This book is filled with interesting facts, anecdotes, thrills and chills, trivia, and fun and interesting bits and pieces of information. Thank you so much for watching and for your interest in our Weird Haunted Virginia City book. Thank you so much for watching Psychic Creations, and if you would like to be a guest on our show, you can contact me at my website, which is www.sandiepsychicstones.com, or at my email address, which is admin@sandiepsychicstones.com. Thank you so much for watching Psychic Creations, and we'll see you next show.